The first time Maya Chen saw the dragon, she was hiding in the ruins of what used to be her school playground. The massive creature landed with a thunderous crash that shook the broken concrete beneath her feet. Its scales gleamed like molten copper in the dying light of Earth's wounded sky, and its eyes burned with an intelligence that made her small heart race. Most children would have screamed. Most children would have run. But Maya had learned that screaming brought the bad aliens faster, and running meant leaving behind the injured woman who had been protecting her for the past 3 days. The dragon's head swiveled toward the pile of rubble where Maya crouched. Steam rose from its nostrils as it sniffed the air, searching. Behind her, Mrs. Rodriguez whimpered softly, clutching the deep wound in her side where the Vex soldiers had shot her during their escape from the city. Maya had watched her parents die when the aliens first arrived. She had seen her older brother Tom get taken away in one of their flying cages. She had learned that the universe was full of monsters who wanted to hurt humans just because they could. But something about this dragon felt different. The creature's massive head lowered until it was level with her hiding spot. Its breath was warm against her face, smelling of metal and something like cinnamon. When it spoke, its voice rumbled like distant thunder, but the words were gentle. "Little human," the dragon said in perfect English. "I can smell your fear, but also your courage. Why do you not flee?" Maya's throat felt dry as desert sand. She had to swallow twice before she could speak. "Mrs. Rodriguez is hurt. I can't carry her." The dragon's eyes widened slightly, and Maya could have sworn she saw something like surprise flicker across its ancient features. "You stay with the wounded one, even knowing I could kill you both." "You're going to anyway, aren't you?" Maya asked, surprised by how steady her own voice sounded. "All the aliens want us dead." The great head tilted to one side, considering her words. "I am Kozak Thul, young human. I am indeed alien to your world, but I am not your enemy. The Vex who hunt you are my enemies as well." Maya blinked in confusion. "But you're with them. You have to be. You came from the sky like they did. The sky belongs to many peoples, little one. Not all who fall from the stars bring death." Kozak Thul's massive form shifted, and Maya saw deep scars running along his flanks, some still weeping a silvery fluid she guessed might be dragon blood. "The Vex attacked my ship as well. They hunt anything that might interfere with their harvest of your people." Mrs. Rodriguez stirred behind Maya, groaning softly. The woman's face was pale, and Maya could see she was getting worse. They had been hiding for 3 days, drinking rainwater from puddles and eating whatever scraps Maya could scavenge from the abandoned buildings. The teacher needed real medical help, the kind Maya couldn't provide. "My friend is dying," Maya said, meeting the dragon's burning gaze. "If you're really not one of the bad guys, can you help her?" Kozak Thul was quiet for a long moment, studying them both with those ancient, intelligent eyes. Maya held her breath, aware that everything depended on what happened next. Around them, the city burned in the distance, and the sound of Vex hunting ships hummed through the air like angry wasps. "I can help her," the dragon finally said. "But if I do, you must trust me completely. The healing will require me to touch her, and afterward she will bear the mark of my fire. Some humans have found this disturbing." Maya didn't hesitate. "Do it." The dragon moved with surprising gentleness for something so large. One massive claw extended toward Mrs. Rodriguez, and Maya watched in amazement as it began to glow with a soft golden light. When the claw touched the teacher's wounded side, the light flowed like liquid fire across her body. Mrs. Rodriguez's eyes flew open with a sharp intake of breath, but instead of pain, her face showed wonder. The deep gash in her side sealed itself, leaving behind only unmarked skin and a faint pattern of golden lines that looked almost like a tattoo. "This is impossible," Mrs. Rodriguez whispered, sitting up slowly. "The wound was infected. I was dying." "Dragonfire heals as well as destroys," Kozak Thul explained. "Though the Vex would have you believe we are only creatures of violence and death." Maya helped Mrs. Rodriguez to her feet, marveling at how strong the woman seemed now. The golden lines on her skin pulsed faintly with their own light, beautiful and strange. "Why?" Mrs. Rodriguez asked, looking up at the massive dragon. "Why would you help us?" Kozak Thul's expression grew serious, his scales darkening to a deeper bronze. "Because I have learned something in my travels across the galaxy that the Vex refuse to understand. Strength is not measured by how much destruction you can cause, but by what you choose to protect." The dragon's gaze shifted to Maya, and she felt a warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with his fire. This small human chose to protect you rather than save herself. That choice makes her worth 100 Vex warriors. In the distance, the humming of Vex ships grew louder. Kozak Thul's head snapped toward the sound, his nostrils flaring. "They come," he said grimly. "We must move. I know of a place where you will be safe, but the journey will be dangerous." Maya looked at Mrs. Rodriguez, who nodded firmly despite the fear in her eyes. They had no other choice, and something deep in Maya's heart told her they could trust this strange dragon who healed instead of harmed. "We'll come with you," Maya said. Kozak Thul lowered his massive body to the ground. "Then climb upon my back, brave ones. It is time you learned that not all dragons serve the darkness." As Maya and Mrs. Rodriguez climbed onto the dragon's broad back, settling between his powerful shoulder blades, she felt something she hadn't experienced since the invasion began. Hope. Maybe they really could survive this. Maybe the universe wasn't full of only monsters after all. The dragon's wings spread wide, casting shadows across the ruined playground. With a powerful leap, they soared into the dangerous sky, leaving the hunting Vex behind as they flew toward an uncertain but no longer hopeless future. Flying on the back of a dragon was nothing like Maya had imagined from the old fairy tales. The wind whipped through her hair with brutal force, and she had to press her face against Kozak Thul's warm scales to breathe properly. Mrs. Rodriguez held onto her tightly, both of them gripping the dragon's natural ridges to keep from falling into the burning city below. The Vex hunting ships followed them like mechanical hawks, their blue energy weapons lighting up the darkening sky. Maya could hear the alien war cries echoing from their ships, harsh sounds that made her stomach turn with remembered fear. These were the creatures that had killed her parents, that had torn apart everything she had ever known. "Hold fast," Kozak Thul called back to them, his voice somehow carrying clearly despite the rushing wind. "I will show these Vex why my people are feared across the galaxy." The dragon suddenly folded his wings and dropped like a stone toward the ruined streets below. Maya's stomach lurched as they plummeted, but just when she thought they would crash into the broken buildings, Kozak Thul spread his wings again and twisted through the air with impossible grace. Behind them, 2 Vex ships collided with each other as they tried to follow the dragon's sudden maneuver. They exploded in brilliant flashes of green fire that lit up the night sky. But more ships were coming, their searchlights sweeping the darkness as they hunted for the escaping humans. "There," Kozak Thul rumbled, banking sharply toward what looked like an old subway entrance. "We go underground. The Vex ships cannot follow us there." They landed hard in the debris-filled street, and Maya's teeth rattled as the dragon's claws scraped against broken concrete. Mrs. Rodriguez helped her down from Kozak Thul's back, and Maya was surprised to find her legs shaking. Flying had been terrifying and amazing at the same time. The subway entrance gaped like a dark mouth in the earth. Maya could smell stagnant water and something else, something that made her nose wrinkle. But behind them, the Vex ships were getting closer, their searchlights beginning to sweep this part of the city. "The tunnels lead to a place where others have gathered," Kozak Thul explained as he squeezed his massive form through the subway entrance. His scales scraped against the concrete walls, but he managed to fit, though barely. "Humans who have chosen to fight rather than hide." Maya followed the dragon into the darkness, one hand on Mrs. Rodriguez's arm and the other trailing along the tunnel wall. The teacher had produced a small flashlight from her pocket, and its weak beam pushed back just enough of the blackness to let them see where they were going. "How do you know about these people?" Mrs. Rodriguez asked as they walked deeper into the tunnel system. "Because I have been watching your species since the Vex arrived," Kozak Thul replied. His voice echoed strangely in the enclosed space. "I have seen how you fight, how you protect each other, how you refuse to surrender even when victory seems impossible." They walked for what felt like hours through the winding tunnels. Sometimes they passed old subway cars, their windows shattered and their metal frames twisted by some great force. Maya tried not to think about what might have happened to the people who had been riding those trains when the invasion began. Finally, they began to see light ahead. Not the harsh blue glare of Vex technology, but warm, flickering light that reminded Maya of campfires and safety. As they rounded a corner, she gasped at what she saw. The tunnel opened into a vast underground chamber that must have once been a station platform. But now it was something entirely different. Dozens of people had made this place into a hidden city. Tents and makeshift shelters lined the walls, and cooking fires sent smoke up toward carefully concealed ventilation shafts. Children played between the shelters while adults worked on weapons and equipment. Maya saw teenagers not much older than her brother Tom cleaning rifles and checking ammunition. Everyone looked thin and tired, but their eyes burned with determination. When Kozak Thul emerged into the chamber, every conversation stopped. Weapons were raised, and Maya heard dozens of safeties clicking off. The dragon froze, keeping his movements slow and non-threatening. "Wait!" Maya called out, stepping between the dragon and the nearest group of armed humans. "He's a friend. He saved us." A tall man with graying hair and sergeant's stripes on his torn military uniform stepped forward. His rifle remained pointed at Kozak Thul's head, but Maya could see uncertainty in his eyes. "That thing is alien," the sergeant said firmly. "All aliens are enemies. That's how this war works, kid." "Not all aliens," a new voice said from the crowd. An elderly woman emerged from the shadows, leaning heavily on a walking stick. Maya noticed that one of the woman's arms ended just below the elbow, and burns covered half of her face, but her remaining eye was sharp and intelligent. "Dr. Sarah Chen," the woman introduced herself, looking directly at Maya. "I'm a xenobiologist. I've studied alien species for 30 years, and I can tell you that dragon is not Vex." Maya blinked in surprise. "Chen? That's my last name too." The woman's eye widened. "What's your first name, child?" "Maya. Maya Chen." Dr. Chen's face went pale beneath her burns. She dropped her walking stick and limped forward, reaching out with her remaining hand to touch Maya's face. "Oh, my dear girl, I'm your grandmother. Your father was my son." Maya felt the world spin around her. She had thought all her family was dead, but here was her father's mother, alive and fighting with the resistance. The woman pulled Maya into a fierce hug, and for the first time since the invasion began, Maya felt truly safe. "Your father told me about you in his last message," Dr. Chen whispered, tears running down her cheek. "He said you were the bravest little girl in the world." He was right. The sergeant lowered his rifle slightly, though he still watched Kozak Thul with suspicion. "If Chen vouches for the dragon, I'll listen, but one wrong move and we put it down." Kozak Thul inclined his great head respectfully. "I understand your caution, warrior, but I come with more than just these two refugees. I bring information about the Vex that could save your species." Dr. Chen stepped back from Maya but kept one hand on her shoulder. "What kind of information?" "The Vex are not invincible," the dragon said simply. "They have a weakness, one that humans are uniquely positioned to exploit, but it will require courage beyond anything your species has shown before." The crowd of survivors pressed closer, hanging on every word. Maya could see hope beginning to kindle in their eyes, the same hope she had felt when Kozak Thul first spoke to her with kindness instead of cruelty. "Tell us," the sergeant demanded. Kozak Thul's scales shimmered in the firelight as he prepared to reveal the secret that could change everything. "The Vex fear only one thing in all the galaxy. They fear the bonds that humans form with each other. They fear your love." The underground chamber fell silent except for the crackling of cooking fires. Maya watched as the adult faces around her shifted from confusion to skepticism to something that might have been desperate hope. "You're telling us that love is a weapon?" Sergeant Morrison asked, his voice heavy with disbelief. "That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard." Dr. Chen raised her hand for silence, her scientific mind already working through the implications. "Wait, James, let the dragon explain. In xenobiology, we've learned that what seems impossible to one species can be perfectly natural to another." Kozak Thul settled his massive form more comfortably on the platform, his golden eyes reflecting the firelight. "The Vex Empire spans thousands of worlds, Sergeant Morrison. They have conquered species far more advanced than humanity, beings with technology that could turn stars into weapons, creatures that could manipulate time itself." Maya found herself sitting cross-legged on the cold concrete, completely absorbed in the dragon's words. Around her, other children had crept closer, their parents too fascinated to pull them back to safety. Yet in all their conquests, Kozak Thul continued, The Vex have never encountered anything like human emotional bonds. Your species forms connections that transcend logic, that make individuals willing to sacrifice everything for others who share no blood relation. Mrs. Rodriguez, still bearing the golden marks of dragonfire on her skin, spoke up from where she sat near Maya. I don't understand. Lots of species must care for their young. That's basic biology. Caring for offspring is indeed common, the dragon agreed. But humans extend this care to complete strangers. You risk your lives for those you have never met. You form families from choice rather than genetics. You create bonds so strong that they alter your brain chemistry and make you capable of impossible feats. Dr. Chen's remaining eye lit up with understanding. The neurochemical changes associated with human bonding. Oxytocin, dopamine, the entire limbic system response. But how could that possibly threaten the Vex? Kozak Thul's scales darkened to a deeper bronze, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of ancient knowledge. Because the Vex Empire is built on isolation. Every Vex individual is completely alone in its mind. They communicate through technology, not emotion. They cooperate through programming, not choice. Maya thought about this, remembering the cold mechanical voices she had heard from Vex soldiers. They had sounded more like computers than living beings. So they don't understand love at all? More than that, young Maya. Love is toxic to them. When they encounter true human emotional bonds, especially in moments of great sacrifice or protection, it creates a psychic resonance that disrupts their technology and confuses their hive mind communications. The chamber erupted in excited whispers. Maya saw adults grabbing each other's hands, their faces showing the first real hope she had witnessed since the invasion began. Wait, Sergeant Morrison said, holding up his hand. Even if that's true, how does it help us? We can't exactly hug the Vex to death. Actually, Dr. Chen said slowly, we might be able to do something very much like that. She turned to face the gathered survivors. If human emotional bonds truly disrupt their systems, then the strongest possible emotional response would be a parent protecting their child. Maya's grandmother finished. The most powerful bond humans can form. Kozak Thul nodded approvingly. You understand quickly, but it requires more than just parental love. It requires a network of these bonds all resonating together, a community united not by fear or survival, but by genuine care for one another. Maya stood up suddenly, her young mind making connections that the adults were still struggling with. That's why they separate us. That's why they take children away from their parents. They're not just being cruel, they're protecting themselves. The dragon's eyes widened with something like pride. Wisdom beyond your years, little one. Yes, the Vex learned long ago to break human families apart because intact families fighting together could disrupt entire Vex battalions. Mrs. Rodriguez struggled to her feet, the golden lines on her skin pulsing brighter as her emotions intensified. Then we need to find the children they've taken. We need to reunite the families. It's not that simple, Sergeant Morrison protested. The Vex have holding facilities all over the continent. Most of them are heavily guarded fortress ships floating in the atmosphere. Even if we could reach them, we'd need an army. No, Maya said quietly, but her voice carried clearly through the chamber. We don't need an army. We need something the Vex can't understand or fight against. She walked to the center of the group, feeling all eyes on her. For a moment, she was just a scared 10-year-old girl who missed her parents and wanted her brother back. But then she thought about Mrs. Rodriguez choosing to protect her, about Kozak Thul healing someone he didn't even know, about her grandmother's joy at finding her alive. We need to choose to be a family, Maya continued. All of us. Not just blood relatives, but everyone here. Everyone we rescue. If the Vex can't handle real human bonds, then we make this whole resistance into one giant family. Dr. Chen smiled for the first time since Maya had met her. The child is right. We've been thinking about this as a military problem, but it's actually a social one. But how do we weaponize love? Asked a young woman holding a baby. I mean, I'd die for my daughter, but I can't shoot carrying at a Vex soldier. Kozak Thul lifted his great head, and Maya could see ancient sadness in his eyes. You cannot weaponize love because that would destroy what makes it powerful. But you can amplify it. The dragon gestured with one wing toward the makeshift community around them. Look at what you have already built here. Strangers caring for each other's children. Adults risking their lives to gather food for the group. Teenagers learning to fight not for glory, but to protect the innocent. Maya understood suddenly what the dragon was suggesting. We don't need to attack the Vex directly. We just need to be ourselves. Really, truly ourselves. And when they come for us, the resonance of our bonds will overwhelm their systems, Dr. Chen finished. It's brilliant. It's also terrifying because it means making ourselves more vulnerable, not less. Sergeant Morrison was quiet for a long moment, clearly struggling with the concept. Finally, he set down his rifle and looked around at the faces surrounding him. I've been treating this like a war where the strongest wins. But maybe it's actually a war where the most human wins. There is one more thing, Kozakthul said solemnly. If you choose this path, you must understand that the Vex will eventually adapt. They will find ways to shield themselves from human emotional resonance. This strategy will not work forever. Maya felt her heart sink. So even if we win, we lose? No, little one, the dragon said gently. If you win this way, you prove something to the entire galaxy. You prove that love is stronger than conquest, that bonds are more powerful than weapons. And once that truth spreads to other worlds, other species will remember what the Vex have made them forget. Dr. Chen nodded slowly. We wouldn't just be saving Earth. We'd be starting a rebellion that could free the entire galaxy. Maya looked around at the faces of her new family, her grandmother, Mrs. Rodriguez, the gruff sergeant who was learning to care, the young parents protecting their children, the teenagers ready to fight for something bigger than themselves. Then we do it, she said simply. We choose love. 3 weeks after Kozakthul's revelation, the underground resistance had transformed into something none of them had expected. What started as a desperate survival group had become a genuine, community bound by choice rather than necessity. Maya watched from her perch on a supply crate as Mrs. Rodriguez taught a group of teenage fighters how to meditate before combat. The golden lines on the teacher's skin had faded to a subtle glow, but they still pulsed brighter when she felt strong emotions. Nearby, Sergeant Morrison was showing a group of children how to tie knots, his gruff military manner softened by weeks of surrogate fatherhood. The bonds grow stronger, Kozakthul observed, settling his massive form beside Maya's makeshift seat. The dragon had learned to navigate the underground chambers with surprising grace, though he still had to duck his head in most tunnels. Is it working? Maya asked, though she could already see the changes in everyone around her. People smiled more often now. They hugged freely. Children who had been traumatized by loss had begun to laugh again as dozens of adults stepped up to care for them. More than you know, the dragon replied. I can sense the Vex patrols becoming agitated when they pass overhead. Their communications are developing static interference they cannot explain. Dr. Chen approached them, carrying a tablet that displayed readings from equipment she had salvaged from her destroyed laboratory. Kozakthul is right. I'm detecting electromagnetic anomalies throughout the city. The patterns match theoretical models for psychic resonance fields. Maya studied the scrolling data, though most of it was beyond her understanding. So we're actually affecting them? The question now, her grandmother said grimly, is whether we're strong enough to make a real difference when it matters. Their answer came sooner than expected. The tunnel's early warning system, a network of children posted at various entrances, began signaling with the coded taps they had developed. Vex forces were moving in the streets above more than usual. Sergeant Morrison appeared at Maya's side within seconds, his expression tense. Looks like a major sweep. 3 full battalions moving in a search pattern. They know we're down here. Maya felt her stomach clench with familiar fear, but she also noticed something new. Around the chamber, people were moving with purpose rather than panic. Parents gathered their children close, but not in desperate clutches of terror. Instead, they formed protective circles where everyone could see and touch each other. They found us because of the resonance field, Dr. Chen realized. Our bonds are strong enough now that they're creating a detectable signature. So what do we do? Asked the young mother with the baby. Run deeper into the tunnels? Kozakthul rose to his full height, his scales shimmering with inner fire. No, running will only delay the inevitable. If the resonance is strong enough to draw them here, it may be strong enough to affect them directly. Maya stood up on her crate, looking out over the community that had become her family. We stay together. No matter what happens, we don't let them separate us. The sound of Vex drilling equipment echoed from above as the aliens began cutting through the street to reach the subway tunnels. Red laser light started seeping through cracks in the ceiling, and the acrid smell of melted concrete filled the air. Positions, Sergeant Morrison called out, but his voice lacked the harsh edge it had carried in their early days. Now it sounded more like a father organizing a family activity. The fighters took their places, but something unprecedented happened. Instead of spreading out for optimal tactical advantage, they stayed close together. Parents fought back to back with their children between them. Teenagers linked arms with elderly survivors. Mrs. Rodriguez positioned herself where she could see both the fighters and the children they were protecting. Maya found herself at the center of it all, her grandmother's hand on one shoulder and Mrs. Rodriguez's on the other. Around them, the entire community formed concentric circles of protection, each person touching at least two others. The ceiling exploded inward with a shower of debris and red light. Vex soldiers dropped through the hole on anti-gravity platforms, their black armor gleaming and their weapons charging with deadly blue energy. Maya had expected the familiar sounds of Vex communication, the harsh electronic chittering that had haunted her nightmares. Instead, she heard something she had never experienced before. The aliens were silent except for confused static bursts from their helmets. The lead Vex soldier raised its weapon toward the center of the human circle, but then stopped, its head tilted as if listening to something only it could hear. The weapon's blue glow flickered and died. "It's working," Dr. Chen whispered, her voice filled with amazement. "Look at their equipment." Maya watched as the Vex soldiers' weapons powered down one by one. Their communication systems sparked and failed. Even their anti-gravity platforms began to wobble as their technology fought against the invisible field of human connection. But the aliens were not helpless. They began advancing on foot, pulling crude kinetic weapons from their armor. If they could not rely on their technology, they would fall back on brute force. "Hold the circle," Sergeant Morrison called out. "Whatever happens, stay connected." The Vex charged and the human fighters met them. But this was unlike any battle Maya had ever imagined. The humans fought not as individuals seeking personal survival, but as a unified organism protecting its heart. When one fighter fell, two others immediately moved to fill the gap. When a child cried out in fear, every adult in earshot responded with protective fury. Maya watched a Vex soldier strike down a teenage boy named David, who had been teaching her card games. Instead of the boy's death weakening the human formation, it seemed to strengthen it. His foster parents, a middle-aged couple who had lost their own son, fought with desperate love to protect David's body and the other children near him. The resonance field suddenly intensified. Maya could feel it now, a warm pulse that seemed to synchronize with her heartbeat. Around the chamber, every human heart began beating in rhythm, creating a biological harmony that made the air itself seem to vibrate. The effect on the Vex was immediate and devastating. Their movements became erratic as their neural implants overloaded. Several soldiers collapsed entirely, their artificial enhancement systems failing under the assault of pure human emotion. But Maya could see that the battle was far from over. More Vex were dropping through the ceiling, and these wore different armor, heavier shielding that seemed to protect them from the resonance field's effects. "Adaptation," Kozak Thul growled, breathing a stream of fire that forced several shielded Vex back. They learned quickly. Dr. Chen's readings showed the electromagnetic interference was weakening as the new Vex equipment compensated for the psychic resonance. "We need to intensify the field, but I don't know how." Maya looked around at her family because that's what they truly were now, bound by choice and love rather than blood. She thought about her parents, about her brother Tom somewhere in a Vex prison ship, about all the families that had been torn apart by this war, and suddenly she understood what they needed to do. "We need to reach the other prisoners," she called out over the sounds of battle. "The children in the Vex ships. If we can connect with them, if we can make them feel like part of our family even from a distance, the resonance field would amplify exponentially," Dr. Chen finished. Her eyes wide with understanding, Kozak Thul turned his great head toward Maya, his golden eyes blazing with something that might have been hope. "Can you do it, little one? Can you open your heart wide enough to embrace children you have never met?" Maya closed her eyes and thought about Tom. Then she thought about all the other children like him, scared and alone in alien prisons. She imagined them as part of her circle, part of her family, part of the love that was growing stronger every moment. The resonance field exploded outward with the force of a supernova. The resonance field that erupted from Maya's expanded heart swept across the city like an invisible tsunami. In the underground chamber, every human felt it, a sudden connection not just to those physically present, but to children scattered across dozens of Vex prison ships floating in Earth's atmosphere. Maya gasped as her consciousness suddenly exploded beyond the confines of her small body. She could feel them all. Hundreds of frightened children locked in alien cells crying for parents they thought were dead. The sensation was overwhelming, like trying to hold an ocean in a teacup. "Tom," she whispered, and somehow, impossibly, she felt him respond. Her brother was alive, somewhere high above in one of the prison ships, and he had felt her call. Around the chamber, other adults were having similar experiences. A woman named Sarah suddenly fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. "Emma, my daughter Emma is alive." "She's scared, but she's alive." The Vex soldiers in the chamber staggered as their shielded equipment began to fail. The resonance field wasn't just disrupting their technology now. It was actively rewriting the electromagnetic patterns around them. Several aliens collapsed as their neural implants short-circuited completely. But Maya barely noticed the battle anymore. Her awareness was expanding further, touching minds throughout the city and beyond. Every human child held prisoner by the Vex was suddenly part of their underground family, connected by bonds of love that transcended physical distance. "The prison ships," Dr. Chen called out, staring at her instruments in amazement. "I'm reading massive system failures across the entire Vex fleet." High above the city, the impossible was happening. In ship after ship, human children were feeling the call of the Resistance family. Their emotional responses were creating localized resonance fields that spread through the Vex vessels like wildfire. Technology that had never failed before was suddenly crashing as love proved stronger than programming. Through her expanded awareness, Maya felt Tom's consciousness growing stronger. He was rallying the other children in his ship, telling them they weren't alone anymore. She could sense him moving through the corridors, gathering frightened kids and somehow making them feel safe despite their circumstances. "Maya," Tom's voice seemed to whisper in her mind, "I can feel you. I can feel all of you. We're going to get out of here." The prison ship holding Tom began to lose altitude as its anti-gravity systems failed. But instead of crashing, the vessel settled gently toward the ground as its emergency protocols engaged. The same thing was happening across the sky. Dozens of Vex ships making controlled descents as their crews lost the ability to maintain their technology. In the underground chamber, the remaining Vex soldiers were retreating toward their entry point. Without their advanced weapons and communication systems, they were no match for humans fighting with the strength of absolute unity. Kozak Thul watched the aliens flee with something like satisfaction. "It has begun," he rumbled. "The cascade effect that will spread across the galaxy." But Maya was barely listening. Her attention was focused on a prison ship that had landed just a few blocks away. She could feel Tom and dozens of other children inside, no longer locked in their cells as the ship's security systems failed along with everything else. "We have to go to them," she said, opening her eyes and looking around at her family. "The children are getting out, but they'll be lost and scared." "They need us," Sergeant Morrison nodded grimly. "The Vex will try to regroup, but their command structure is in chaos. This is our chance to reunite the families." Mrs. Rodriguez stood up, the golden lines on her skin now blazing like miniature suns. "I can feel them too. The children, they're calling for help." The entire underground community began moving as one organism. Parents who had lost children rushed toward the tunnel exits, guided by an internal compass that pointed them toward their loved ones. Those without blood family moved just as urgently, drawn to children who needed protection regardless of genetic connection. Maya led the way, her connection to Tom pulling her through the subway tunnels toward the surface. Behind her, nearly 200 people followed in organized groups. They moved with purpose but also with joy, the first real joy many had felt since the invasion began. When they emerged into the streets, Maya gasped at what she saw. The city was transformed. Vex technology lay scattered and dead throughout the streets. Prison ships sat like wounded metal birds on rooftops and in parks, their hatches hanging open as human children poured out into the daylight. But it wasn't chaos. The children moved in groups, the older ones protecting the younger, all of them guided by the same resonance field that connected them to the approaching rescue teams. Maya watched a boy who couldn't have been more than 7 years old, leading a group of toddlers toward a cluster of adults 3 blocks away. Somehow he knew exactly where to go. "Tom," Maya called out as she spotted her brother emerging from a crashed ship 2 streets over. He was carrying a small girl and shepherding a group of children who looked up at him with complete trust. Tom's head snapped up at the sound of her voice. and his face lit up with the brightest smile Maya had ever seen. He carefully set down the little girl and ran toward her, the other children following like he was a magnet. When brother and sister collided in the middle of the rubble-strewn street, Maya felt the resonance field pulse with such intensity that windows in nearby buildings actually vibrated. Their reunion was felt by every connected human in the city, amplifying the field's power even further. "I knew you were alive," Tom said, holding her tight. "Even when they told us all the adults were dead, I knew you had to be alive somewhere." Dr. Chen reached them moments later, and Maya watched her grandmother's face crumple with relief as she pulled both children into her arms. "My precious grandchildren, I thought I had lost you both." Around them, similar reunions were playing out across the city. Parents finding children they had mourned, adults adopting orphaned kids who needed families. The resonance field grew stronger with each connection, each choice to love rather than merely survive. But even in the midst of joy, Maya could see that their victory was incomplete. In the distance, Vex reinforcement ships were approaching, vessels from other continents that still had functional technology. These aliens had learned from what happened here and were coming prepared. "They're adapting," Kozakthul observed, landing nearby with a thunderous crash. The dragon's scales were dark with concern. "The ships approaching have different shielding. They will not be as vulnerable to the resonance field." Maya looked at her growing family, Tom and her grandmother, Mrs. Rodriguez with the golden mark still glowing on her skin, Sergeant Morrison now surrounded by a dozen adopted children, hundreds of others finding love in the ruins of their world. "Then we make the field stronger," she said simply. "We don't just connect the humans in this city. We connect every human everywhere." Dr. Chen's remaining eye widened. "Maya, that's impossible. The human mind can't process connections on that scale." "Not one human mind," Maya agreed. "But what about all of them working together?" She closed her eyes and reached out again, but this time she didn't try to contain the ocean of connection within herself. Instead, she shared it. Every adult, every child, every teenager in their community became a node in a vast network of human consciousness. Tom gasped as he felt the expansion. "Maya, I can feel everyone. Not just here, but everywhere. Humans fighting in other cities, hiding in mountains, resisting in underground bunkers across the world." The resonance field erupted outward again, but this time it didn't stop at the city limits. It raced across continents like wildfire, connecting human communities that had thought they were alone in their struggle. Families separated by thousands of miles suddenly felt each other's presence. Resistance groups discovered they were part of a global network of love and defiance. The approaching Vex ships faltered as their crews experienced something their species had never encountered. Not just the electromagnetic disruption they had learned to shield against, but a psychic pressure that seemed to come from the planet itself. The collective will of humanity, united in love and determination, pressed against their consciousness like a physical force. One by one, the alien ships began changing course. Not retreating exactly, but no longer advancing either. Their crews were experiencing something that their programming had never prepared them for: doubt. "It's working," Mrs. Rodriguez breathed, watching as the most distant ships actually began climbing toward space. "They're leaving," but Maya knew it wasn't over. Through the global network of human consciousness, she could feel Vex commanders in deep space calling for reinforcements. Bigger ships, different weapons. The aliens would return, and next time they would be prepared for humanity's greatest strength. "We've won the first battle," she told her family, opening her eyes to look at the faces surrounding her. "But the real war is just beginning. And when they come back, we need to be ready to show the entire galaxy what humans are really capable of." Tom squeezed her hand, and through their connection, Maya felt his absolute certainty. "Then we'll be ready, all of us together." Above them, the last Vex ship disappeared into the clouds, carrying word of humanity's impossible victory to the far reaches of the galaxy. 6 months after the Great Resonance, as historians would later call it, Maya stood on the observation deck of the rebuilt communications center, watching ships descend from the stars. But these weren't Vex vessels coming to destroy. They were refugee ships carrying beings from dozens of different worlds, all seeking the planet where love had proven stronger than conquest. The global human network had grown beyond anything Maya had imagined possible. Every major city now had its own resonance hub, places where families gathered not just for protection but for the pure joy of connection. Children who had been separated from their parents during the invasion served as living bridges between communities, their experiences of loss and reunion creating particularly strong nodes in the network. Tom appeared beside her, now taller and older looking than his 14 years. Leading children through the Vex ship had changed him, given him a gravity that made adults listen when he spoke. "The Andromedans are requesting permission to land," he said. "That makes 12 species this week." Maya nodded, but her attention was focused on the readings Dr. Chen was showing her on a tablet. Her grandmother had become the foremost expert on what they now called empathic resonance fields, and her data showed something remarkable happening throughout the galaxy. "Look at this," Dr. Chen said, pointing to a star map covered in pulsing dots of light. Each dot represents a world where the local population has begun forming connection networks based on the human model. The Vex Empire is losing control of entire sectors. The pattern was unmistakable. Starting from Earth, waves of rebellion were spreading across the galaxy as enslaved species remembered what it meant to choose love over survival, connection over isolation. The Vex had spent millennia teaching conquered peoples that caring for others was weakness. Humanity had proven them wrong in just 6 months. "The really amazing part," Tom said, "is that each species is doing it differently. The crystal beings of Xerion create harmonic resonances through shared songs. The Mollusk Federation uses chemical empathy networks, but they're all based on the same principle, choosing to care for others as family." Maya smiled at her brother's enthusiasm, but she also felt the weight of responsibility that came with their success. Through the global network, she could sense the approaching danger that Earth's victory had created. The Vex Empire was mobilizing forces unlike anything they had ever deployed before. "Kozak Thul," she called out, and the great dragon emerged from the shadows where he had been resting. Over the past months, he had become something like Earth's unofficial ambassador to the growing coalition of free worlds. "I feel your concern, little one," the dragon rumbled. "The Vex are indeed preparing something unprecedented. My contacts in the Outer Rim report movement of their extinction fleet." Dr. Chen looked up from her tablet, her face pale. "Extinction fleet? Ships designed not to conquer, but to completely sterilize worlds," Kozak Thul explained grimly. "The Vex have decided that if they cannot control the rebellion spreading from Earth, they will eliminate its source entirely." Maya felt a chill that had nothing to do with the morning air. Through the network, she could sense the fear of humans around the world as they processed this information. Parents holding their children closer, communities preparing for a final battle that might end everything they had built. But she also felt something else: determination. The same kind of fierce love that had created the first resonance field was now burning in millions of human hearts, ready to defend not just their own families but the new galactic family they had helped create. "How long do we have?" Tom asked. 3 weeks, perhaps 4, Kozak Thul replied. "The extinction fleet moves slowly, but once it arrives there will be no evacuation, no negotiation, only complete destruction." Maya closed her eyes and reached out through the network, feeling the pulse of human consciousness around the globe. In underground cities, in mountain strongholds, in rebuilt communities rising from the ashes of the invasion, she felt the same response everywhere. They would not run. They would not abandon the galaxy to return to the darkness of Vex isolation. "Then we need to make sure the rebellion spreads faster than they can travel," she said, opening her eyes to look at her family. "If they want to destroy Earth to stop the contagion of love, we need to make that love so widespread that destroying one world won't matter." Mrs. Rodriguez approached from the communications center, the golden lines on her skin now permanently bright. Over the months, she had discovered that the Dragonfire healing had given her a unique ability to amplify empathic connections across vast distances. "I've been in contact with the Resistance networks on 47 worlds," she reported. "They're all asking the same question. How do we create resonance fields strong enough to affect Vex fleets in deep space?" Maya thought about this, remembering the moment when she had first reached out to the children in the prison ships. The connection had required her to expand her consciousness beyond anything she had thought possible. But what if they didn't need individual humans to make impossible connections? What if they could link entire planetary networks together? "We need to connect the worlds," she said suddenly. "Not just humans to humans, but planet to planet. Create a galactic resonance field that the Vex can't escape no matter where they go." Dr. Chen was already working on her tablet, running calculations. The energy requirements would be enormous, and we'd need some kind of relay system to maintain coherence across interstellar distances. I can provide the relay system, Kozak Thul offered. My people have abilities you have not yet seen. We can serve as living amplifiers, carrying the resonance between star systems. Tom's eyes lit up with understanding. A network of dragons, each one connected to a planetary resistance network, all of them working together to create a field that covers the entire galaxy. But that would require dozens of dragons, Mrs. Rodriguez pointed out. And we only have Kozak Thul. The great dragon's scales shimmered with something that might have been amusement. Did you think I came to your world alone, teacher? My clan has been watching this rebellion with great interest. They are already positioning themselves throughout the galaxy, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. Maya felt her heart leap with hope and excitement. How many? Enough, Kozak Thul replied simply. More than enough. Through the network, Maya could feel the response as the news spread. On every human-inhabited world, in every resistance cell, in every family that had chosen love over fear, she felt the same reaction. They weren't alone. They had never been alone. And now they were going to prove to the universe that connection was stronger than any weapon the Vex could deploy. When do we start? Tom asked. Maya looked out at the ships still arriving from distant worlds, bringing refugees who had heard Earth's call and chosen to join the growing family of free peoples. She thought about the children in those ships who would grow up in a galaxy where love was valued over conquest, where different species worked together instead of enslaving each other. We start now, she said. We've got 3 weeks to unite the galaxy. Let's not waste a single day. As if responding to her words, the network pulsed with renewed energy. Across Earth and beyond, millions of beings began preparing for the most ambitious act of love in galactic history. They were going to teach the Vex Empire that some things could not be conquered, could not be destroyed, could only grow stronger when challenged. The dragons were coming. The galaxy was waking up, and humanity's greatest gift to the universe was about to bloom among the stars. The day the Vex extinction fleet arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system, Maya was sitting in a circle with 10,000 other humans on what used to be the ruins of Central Park. Similar gatherings were taking place simultaneously on every inhabited continent, and through the global network she could feel each one as clearly as if she were physically present. But the connections didn't stop at Earth. Through Kozak Thul and his clan, the resonance field now linked 47 worlds across the galaxy. Maya could sense the crystal beings of Xerion singing their harmonies of hope, the water dwellers of Aquatica sharing dreams of freedom through their fluid consciousness, the rock shapers of Granite Prime carving monuments to unity that would last for millennia. They're here, Tom announced, though Maya had already felt the cold presence of the extinction fleet pressing against the outer edges of their expanded awareness. 23 massive ships, each one capable of turning a planet into lifeless rock within hours. Dr. Chen sat beside Maya in the circle, her instruments showing readings that should have been impossible. The resonance field is stable across all connected worlds. Every species, every family, every individual, choosing to participate in the network. I'm reading empathic resonance levels that are literally off any scale we've ever developed. Through her connection to Kozak Thul, Maya felt the dragon's satisfaction. He was positioned at the edge of the solar system, along with dozens of his clan members, each one serving as a living relay point for the galactic network. The dragon's ancient minds were capable of processing connections that would overwhelm younger species, making them perfect conduits for love that spanned light years. The Vex are beginning their approach. Kozak Thul's voice echoed in Maya's mind and simultaneously, in the consciousness of every connected being across the galaxy. Their fleet moves with complete confidence. They believe this will be a simple extermination. Maya stood up in the center of the circle, though her body was just one small part of a consciousness that now spanned half the galaxy. Around her, 10,000 humans rose as well, their movements synchronized not by command but by shared purpose. Are we ready? She asked. And her words rippled through the network to touch every world, every species, every family that had chosen connection over isolation. The answer came back like a wave of starlight, 47 worlds speaking in unison, millions of beings from dozens of species all responding with the same word in their own languages. Yes. The extinction fleet crossed into Earth's orbit, their weapons charging with enough power to crack continents. Maya felt their cold minds through the network. Vex consciousness that had been shaped by millennia of conquest. Incapable of understanding anything beyond domination and control. Begin, she whispered. The galactic resonance field activated all at once. What happened next had never occurred in the recorded history of the universe. 47 worlds, connected by love and amplified by dragon fire, created a psychic phenomenon that reached across space itself. Every Vex mind in the extinction fleet was suddenly flooded with something their species had never experienced. The feeling of being truly loved. Through the network, Maya felt the exact moment when the first Vex commander experienced the sensation of a human parent's love for their child. The alien's consciousness, shaped by isolation and programmed for conquest, simply couldn't process the information. But instead of rejecting it, something deeper in the Vex mind, something that had been buried for millions of years, responded with recognition. One by one, the ships of the extinction fleet stopped advancing. Their weapons powered down as crew members throughout the fleet struggled to understand what was happening to them. For the first time in their species' history, individual Vex were feeling connected to something larger than themselves. But the effect went far beyond simple confusion. The resonance field was awakening memories that the Vex had suppressed for so long they had forgotten they existed. Images of a time before their empire, when their species had been capable of love, of family, of choosing connection over conquest. It's working, Dr. Chen breathed, staring at her readings in amazement. The field isn't just disrupting their technology, it's actually changing their neural patterns, rewriting their consciousness at a fundamental level. Through Kozak Thul, Maya could see what was happening aboard the Vex ships. Crew members were removing their helmets for the first time in decades, looking at each other with eyes that saw individuals rather than just components of a hive mind. Some were actually reaching out to touch their companions, experimenting with physical contact that their culture had forbidden for millennia. But the real transformation was happening at the command level. The fleet admiral, a Vex who had personally overseen the destruction of 17 worlds, was standing in the center of his bridge with tears streaming down his alien face. Through the network, Maya could feel his consciousness awakening to the magnitude of what his species had lost when they chose conquest over love. "We had forgotten," the admiral whispered in the Vex language, his words somehow translated by the resonance field so that every connected being could understand. "We had forgotten what it meant to choose another's welfare over our own survival." The transformation spread through the fleet like wildfire. Vex, who had never questioned their empire's mission, suddenly found themselves overwhelmed by memories of the species they had destroyed, the families they had separated, the love they had systematically eliminated from the galaxy. And with those memories came something even more powerful: the desire to make amends. The fleet admiral opened a communication channel that reached not just Earth, but every world in the galactic network. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of 1,000,000 regrets and the hope of genuine redemption. "Humans of Earth," he said, "people of the free worlds, I am Fleet Admiral Vexthai of the Extinction Fleet. I came here to destroy your world and end the rebellion you have started." He paused, and Maya could feel his struggle to find words for emotions his species had no vocabulary to express. "Instead, you have given me back my soul. You have reminded my people of what we were before we became monsters. We cannot undo the evil we have done, but we can choose to do no more." Throughout the fleet, Vex crew members were making the same choice. Weapon systems that had never been shut down in the ship's operational history were powering off permanently. Communication networks that had been used to coordinate galactic oppression were being repurposed to carry messages of peace. Maya felt tears streaming down her face as she realized what was happening. The rebellion hadn't just defeated the Vex Empire, it had redeemed it. Love had proven so powerful that it had actually transformed the galaxy's greatest enemy into its newest ally. "What happens now?" Tom asked, though Maya could feel he already knew the answer through their connection. "Now we rebuild," she said, looking around at the faces of her human family and feeling the presence of their galactic family, stretching across the stars. "We teach the Vex how to love again. We help them reunite with the families they've forgotten they had. We show them that redemption is always possible." Through the network, she felt the response from 47 worlds and 23 Vex ships. Beings who had been enemies just moments before were now reaching out to each other, eager to learn how different species expressed love, how they built families, how they chose connection over conquest. The war was over. The real work was just beginning. Years later, Maya would stand in the great assembly hall on New Harmony, a space station built jointly by humans, dragons, redeemed Vex, and dozens of other species. She would watch her own children playing with Vex younglings, who were learning for the first time what it meant to choose love over programming. The galaxy had become what she had dreamed of in that first moment when she chose to trust a dragon who offered healing instead of harm, a vast family where every being was valued, where differences were celebrated, and where love grew stronger every day. The child who had faced down an empire with nothing but compassion had grown up to see that empire transform into something beautiful. And in the end, that transformation had been the greatest victory of all.